Layla Kousari from St. Louis, Missouri, and I am a senior in high school. Injustice is not over. Inequality did not stay in the 1960s. Discrimination did not die. In 2015, 50 years after the March on Selma and the Voting Rights Act of 1965, we are faced with similar issues that obstruct people of color, Hispanic Americans, Asian Americans, and other minorities from voting. We are faced with racial profiling and police brutality. We are faced with an America that needs our help. Within my own school, I am the founder and president of the Social Justice Action Team that works to dismantle racism. We have brought in a multitude of speakers, including Sister Evo, who participated on the march in Selma. We have facilitated discussions, and we have started a social media movement. As citizens of a nation that prides itself with principles such as democracy, liberty, and justice, we have the civic responsibility to constantly demand our rights for freedom and self-determination. Equality is a fundamental right that every human being deserves, yet very rarely is it simply handed over. In a fog of inequality through voter discrimination such as ID laws, inaccessible polls, and redistricting to outcast minorities, we must peacefully fight back. We must shine a guiding light by providing free rides to those who are unable to transport themselves to vote, by encouraging young voters to have their voices heard, and by lobbying our federal government for the dismantling of laws that permit discrimination. In 2014, before local elections, I went on the streets and handed out pamphlets explaining how to register to vote in 2 different states. In 2015, I hope to provide free transportation to the poor areas in my hometown, St. Louis, to those who wish to vote but lack the proper accessibility to the polls. And 21 million U.S. citizens lack government-issued photo identification. Most of these Americans are low-income and racial and ethnic minorities. We must organize together peaceful protests and lobby days that show our governments we need voting ID laws to disappear for the sake of equality and democracy. In the aftermath of recent events, I have been witness to police brutality and profiling in St. Louis. I have attended peaceful marches that, similar to Selma, were met with militaristic police officers armed with batons, tear gas, and a jaded idea of racial equality. I have seen parallels between Selma and Ferguson while watching a woman in a wheelchair thrown to the ground by officers and arrested for participating in a peaceful walk to the police headquarters. I see parallels between Ferguson and Selma by government leaders refusing to listen to the majority that need change. Police racial profiling is evident by the fact that 58% of all incarcerated people in the United States are of African American or Hispanic descent, even though these people are only accountable for 25% of America's total population. It is time for us to put an end to this injustice. We must continue to plan for peaceful walks and protests until our demands to end police brutality and profiling, to establish an independent prosecutor for police-related crimes, and to dissolve municipalities are met. We must continue our peaceful protests for the bodies of murdered Black men. We must continue for Michael Brown, for Tamir Rice, for John Crawford. We must continue to create a better future for the children of Eric Garner, Carlos Elises, and Sergeant Manuel Loggins, Jr. As a nation of liberated people, it is our duty to protect and continue to fight for our freedom. True self-determination is only possible with the expansion of voting accessibility. True equality only capable with the end of police racial profiling. We must recognize that inaction is not neutral. Inaction harms. We must recognize that silence is a crime against justice. We must recognize that it is our responsibility to fight for our rights. Together, we must organize. Together, we must overcome.